All right, so let's dig into this podcast episode all about U.S. taxes. It's amazing how much confusion there is around this topic. Getting a clear breakdown is so helpful.
Yeah, it can be a real headache for a lot of people, for sure.
What really struck me was how they, demystified the system and made it feel less intimidating.
Yeah, they did a great job of breaking down those complex concepts into, digestible pieces.
Exactly. And that's exactly our mission in this deep dive, to give you the knowledge to navigate the world of taxes confidently. Think of it as a cheat sheet for a game we're all forced to play.
I like that. It's a game we can't avoid. Might as well learn how to play it strategically.
Exactly. So let's start with the foundation, the U.S. progressive tax system. They explained it really well. It's key to understanding how taxes actually work. What stood out to you about their explanation?
Well, they really emphasize that being in a higher tax bracket doesn't mean all your income is taxed at that higher rate, you know?
Right.
It's tiered, like a staircase. Each portion of your income is taxed at a different rate, depending on which step it falls on.
That's a really helpful way to visualize it. They had a great example with someone earning $50,000.
Yeah.
Only the portion of income that exceeds a certain threshold gets taxed at a higher rate, not the whole amount. It's not as scary as it might seem at first glance.
Right. And they also touched on something many people overlook: state and local taxes.
Yeah.
These can vary drastically depending on where you live.
Huge.
It adds another layer to the whole tax puzzle.
They mentioned those states that seem like tax havens, like Texas and Florida with no income tax. But then you have states like California and New York where state taxes are way higher. I bet that could sway someone's decision on where to live.
It definitely should be a consideration. Imagine relocating for a job that seems like a pay raise, only to find a higher state taxes eat into your gains. You got to factor that in when making big financial decisions.
Okay, let's move on to something that can work in our favor: deductions. That's where it gets interesting. Deductions are like legal loopholes that allow us to reduce our taxable income, which can lead to significant savings.
That's right. And the podcast did a good job of walking through some common deductions you might be eligible for. It's important to remember these aren't just for businesses. There are deductions for individuals, too.
Right. They started with the standard deduction, which is a fixed amount everyone can subtract. But then they went into some really helpful details about itemized deductions, like the mortgage interest deduction.
That one can be a game changer for homeowners, especially in those early years of a mortgage, when a large portion of your payments goes towards interest. Being able to deduct that interest from your taxable income can lead to substantial savings.
And they didn't forget about those of us still paying off student loans. The ability to deduct student loan interest can provide some much-needed relief. They really covered a lot.
Yeah.
They also stressed the importance of tracking business expenses for anyone who's self-employed.
Yes. Crucial to keep detailed records because those expenses can be deducted.
Right? Which lowers your overall tax burden. That brings up a key point they made about record keeping throughout the year. If you're scrambling for receipts at the last minute, you're already behind. Good record keeping is essential for maximizing those deductions and avoiding headaches. What else stood out to you about their advice on deductions?
What I really took away was their emphasis on understanding which deductions are actually beneficial for your specific situation. It's easy to get caught up in deducting things, but it's crucial to consider the bigger picture.
I see what you mean. Blindly following deductions without understanding the nuances could lead to missed opportunities or even unexpected consequences. It's about making informed choices that align with our overall financial goals.
Precisely. And sometimes the best choice might be to just take the standard deduction if it simplifies things and it ends up being more beneficial overall. It's about weighing those options and making strategic decisions.
All right, so we've laid the groundwork with the progressive tax system and explored deductions. Now get ready for the next level: tax credits. These are even more powerful than deductions and can directly reduce your tax bill dollar for dollar.
I find tax credits fascinating because they're like a direct reward for certain actions or circumstances. It's as if the government is saying, hey, we want to encourage this behavior, so here's a financial incentive.
I love that.
Yeah.
Exactly. The podcast hosts really drove home the difference between deductions and credits. Remember that example they used?
Yeah.
Let's say you have a $1,000 deduction versus the $1,000 tax credit. With the deduction, your taxable income goes down by $1,000, which reduces your tax liability by a portion of that amount, depending on your tax bracket. But with the credit, your tax bill is directly reduced by $1,000. It's a huge difference.
It is. And they highlighted some key tax credits everyone should know about. The child tax credit, for example, can provide significant financial relief for families with qualifying children.
And then there's the Earned Income Tax Credit, specifically designed to help lower-income individuals and families make ends meet. These credits can be a lifeline.
Right.
They also mentioned the American Opportunity Credit, which can help offset college expenses. If you're a student or have kids in college, this is a credit worth exploring. It can make a significant dent in those tuition bills. So as you can see, tax credits can have a real impact on your financial situation, often more so than deductions. It's worth taking the time to understand which credits you might be eligible for and how they can help you achieve your financial goals.
Definitely worth it. It's amazing how those can really add up, you know? It's like finding hidden treasure in the tax code.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Speaking of saving, though, the podcast really emphasized planning ahead to avoid that tax season scramble. You know what I mean? What were your key takeaways from their advice on proactive planning?
Well, they said it all starts with your W-4 form, that document you fill out when you start a new job. It's how you tell your employer how much tax to withhold from your paycheck. Getting this right is crucial. You know, you don't want a big tax bill or to give the IRS an interest-free loan.
It's easy to just like breeze through that form without really thinking about it.
Yeah.
But like it said, it's worth taking the time to understand how it affects your overall tax liability.
Absolutely. And they also talked about the importance of record keeping throughout the year, especially if you're self-employed or have lots of deductible expenses.
Right.
Having organized records can make tax seasons so much less stressful and potentially save you a lot of money.
And they had some great advice for like simplifying the whole process too,
Yeah.
whether it's using tax software or getting help from a professional. It's like having a guide in this complex maze.
Those resources can be invaluable, especially if you have a complex financial situation or just feel overwhelmed by the whole process. It's all about finding the right level of support, you know?
Now, I want to dig a bit deeper into something they touched on that I found really interesting, the potential downsides of certain tax deductions.
Oh, yeah.
They specifically mentioned the mortgage interest deduction, which we talked about earlier, as a benefit for homeowners. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, it's fascinating. While it can be valuable, it can also have some unintended consequences. They said it could encourage people to buy homes, even when renting might actually be a better financial choice for them.
That's a really good point. It's easy to get caught up in the tax piece without thinking about the big picture. You know, are we making this decision because it's truly the best for us, or are we just swayed by the potential tax savings?
That's the question. They really encourage listeners to think critically about whether a deduction is truly beneficial or just influencing their decisions in a way that might not be best for them.
Yeah.
It's all about making informed choices, not just chasing those deductions.
I like that. They also brought up an interesting point about the impact of tax deductions on charitable giving.
Yeah.
It really made me think about, the motivations behind our actions.
It's a complex issue. Deductions for charitable donations can definitely encourage giving. But it does make you wonder, are people donating just for the tax break or because they genuinely want to help?
That's a great point. And it goes beyond just personal finances. It touches on those broader questions about values and incentives.
Absolutely. They also delved into the potential impact of tax deductions on income inequality,
Oh, yeah.
pointing out that some deductions, like the mortgage interest deduction, tend to benefit higher income earners more than lower income earners. It highlights how tax policies can affect things like income inequality.
It's an important thing to consider. It reminds us that tax policies aren't just about numbers. They have real-world consequences and can impact social and economic structures.
Right. And then they introduced this idea of tax expenditures.
Okay.
Basically, the revenue the government forgoes by offering deductions and credits. It's like choosing to invest that money in certain areas by letting individuals and businesses keep more of it through those tax breaks.
I guess you wonder if those funds could be used differently, like for social programs or infrastructure projects.
Definitely raises questions about priorities and how we use resources as a society.
Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to go back to that practical advice about making tax season less stressful. What were some of your top takeaways from their tips?
Well, they emphasize the importance of gathering all your documents well in advance. Things like your Social Security number, W-2 forms, 1099 forms for freelance work, any relevant financial documents. Being organized can save a lot of time and stress.
It's like prepping all your ingredients before you cook.
Exactly. Having everything in order makes the process so much smoother. And they also talked about free tax preparation resources, especially for people with simple tax situations.
That's awesome.
Those can be super helpful. And of course, for more complex situations, or if you just want expert help, there's always the option of a qualified tax preparer.
Right. They can help you navigate all the complexities and make sure you're taking advantage of everything you're eligible for. Now, I want to bring up something they didn't really cover, but I think it's worth thinking about state taxes. They focused on federal taxes, but state taxes can be just as complex sometimes even more so.
Yeah, they can be. How can we apply what we've learned here to navigate those state tax systems?
That's a great question.
It's important to remember that state taxes can vary a lot. So you need to understand the specific rules in your state.
Okay.
Your state's Department of Revenue website is a great place to start. They usually have tons of information specific to your state.
It's like a localized IRS website.
Exactly. They often have FAQs, helpful guides, and contact info. If you need more help, it's a super valuable resource.
And if we're feeling really ambitious, we could even compare tax policies across different states.
Yeah.
Especially if we're thinking about moving or have income from multiple states.
That's a great point. It could help you make big financial decisions that could be affected by those different state tax policies.
It's all about having the knowledge. The more we understand about the tax system, both federal and state, the better decisions we can make.
I completely agree. It's like having a financial GPS guiding us toward our goals. But before we get too carried away with our newfound tax knowledge, I think we should acknowledge the emotional side of taxes.
That's a really good point. We've been talking about taxes very analytically, but we can't forget that they can be stressful and anxiety-inducing for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone in those feelings can help. It's okay to feel overwhelmed by it all. It's a normal reaction.
And seeking support, whether it's from a tax professional, a financial advisor, or even a friend, can make a huge difference.
It really can. It's all about approaching taxes with a sense of empowerment and knowing that we're all in this together.
Okay, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We explored the U.S. tax system, delved into deductions and credits, and talked about planning and getting expert advice.
Yeah, we even touched on some of the bigger societal implications of tax policies and how they can impact people.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought, something to ponder as you navigate the world of taxes.
I'm all ears.
We've talked about taxes as a system, a set of rules, a game. But what if we looked at it a little differently?
Okay, how so?
What if we thought about taxes as an opportunity?
That's interesting. What do you mean by opportunity?
Well, practically speaking, understanding the tax system gives us opportunities to save money and make smart financial decisions and even, support causes we care about through charitable giving.
It's true. Knowledge is power when it comes to taxes, that's for sure.
But I think it goes beyond just the practical stuff.
Okay.
I think there's a deeper opportunity here.
Go on.
Taxes are how we contribute to the collective good. They're what fund essential services infrastructure, the programs that benefit everyone.
Like we're all investing in our communities in the future together.
Exactly. So what if we stopped seeing taxes as a burden or a necessary evil and started thinking of them as a way to be a part of something bigger than ourselves?
I like that. It changes how you see it from just personal gain to thinking about everyone.
And it lets us talk about tax policy, not just from our own wallets, but as citizens,
Yeah, to think about how our money is being used and to speak up for policies we believe in.
Exactly. It's about realizing that taxes, even though they're complex and sometimes a pain, are part of our shared responsibility to make a fair and successful society.
So as you move forward with everything you've learned from this deep dive, remember taxes are more than just numbers on a form. They're a chance to get involved, to contribute, and to build the world we want to live in.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for being here for this deep dive into U.S. taxes. We hope you've learned something new, gotten some useful tips, and maybe even changed how you think about being a taxpayer. Until next time, happy filing.
If this podcast helped you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep making these videos. Thanks for watching.